On today's Locked On Jayhawks Football Friday, KU Football Spring Showcase.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. You can give me a follow on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio. Thanks for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And on today's edition of Locked On Jayhawks, it's a Football Friday, we have the Spring Showcase. It's tonight for KU in Lawrence. We're going to preview the game, offensive players, defensive players we're most excited for in the showcase for KU. We're going to start with kind of going on, and then we'll get to the offense, then the defense here. Let's start with this. It is tonight, 7 o'clock. It'll be happening at Rock Chalk Park. You might have been wondering, okay, where's it going to happen? Obviously, Memorial Stadium is, basically rubble at this point. Where are they going to play it? Well, it'll be at Rock Chalk Park, which means it's going to be a more limited seating venue. So if you want to get out there, I would suggest probably getting out there a little bit earlier than you normally would. The festivities are going to start at 5:30 there. They're going to have like family fun zone, inflatables, I don't know, all sorts of probably like food trucks and stuff like that kind of near the softball field. I think KU students are going to have an opportunity to get some free like concession vouchers. And I guess gates are opening at 5:30. It's free. There's no ticket needed, but obviously because it is in Rock Chalk Park, smaller seating, there is approximately 6,000 fans are going to be available for first come, first serve. So it is a free, fun event. And honestly, the fact that it is at a smaller venue for something like this, where you're not normally getting 20,000 people at Kansas for the spring football event, I think might actually make it kind of cool in that area. So there's also going to have coverage of it on the Jayhawk Radio Network, and they're going to have a broadcast on ESPN Plus that comes out in the days following. I think that's kind of weird that they're not going to have like a live version of it on ESPN Plus. Like, I don't know. I don't know what the purpose of that is. I'm sure there's one that is maybe above my head and I don't know, above my pay grade, I guess, so to speak. But yeah, you can at least listen to it on the radio from that standpoint. So the key word in all of this is showcase. It is not a spring game for KU. It is a spring showcase. And that is very intentional from Lance Leipold and the staff. Now you will actually see some scrimmage opportunities. You'll see reps against each other. Now, last year, we saw a lot of reps of the second strings versus second strings and third strings versus third strings, but you still saw some with the first versus first. And yeah, guys are mixing in and mixing out and playing different spots and everything, but you at least see some of it. It can be kind of more vanilla in terms of the playbook and everything, but they'll run some drills. It's not just about the scrimmage. It's not just a full game. It's doing some other stuff. So that's why it is a showcase more than an actual game. And I think that's something that has kind of become more popular with other schools. Obviously it was more of a necessity for KU when Lance Leipold first, came in, that it was just about a lack of scholarship players, or I guess that was the Emmett Jones, interim head coach before Lance Leipold took over, and it's kind of stuck that way. So what we can and can't learn from the spring showcase here, I think there are still some things you can learn, even though it is going to be more vanilla. How much three safety football is KU playing, right? Like when they're going to the first string, second string, the third string, are they continually playing a third safety as opposed to using a hawk player, basically, where, yeah, maybe your hawk is more of a safety this year, whereas last year your hawk was basically that perfect hybrid with Craig Young, though he was technically listed as a linebacker. I think because KU has a nice depth and some nice players at the safety position, it makes more sense for KU to use that than to say, let's put another linebacker on the field. And I think that'll help KU in coverage. I think that's a popular defense. A lot of teams like Iowa State certainly are playing in the Big 12, and it's working with that third safety on the field. And I think it helps that, Marvin Grant is a hard-hitting safety, that he's basically like having another linebacker in there. So seeing a little bit of that, I think will be interesting. One-on-one matchups, if someone is a known commodity. One of the things about spring games and scrimmages and practices, just in terms of yourself, is sometimes it can be hard to judge what exactly is what. And I guess just to jump ahead to what we can't learn here, because these two things kind of tie together, like if one unit or one position group dominates the other, or one player dominates the other, it's a little bit of, yeah, that guy looked really good, or that position group looked really good. And it's also a little bit of, or is the other guy just really bad? because it's one thing when you're doing it against other opponents. It's another when you're doing it against yourself, because then you don't know what to compliment and what to fix, right? Now, it's a little bit different for some guys because we do have some known commodities in a certain sense, right? So, like, it's one thing if Dylan Wuedke beats Logan Brown, because then it's like, okay, was Dylan Wuedke just that good? Is Logan Brown struggling? Like, where is it, right? But let's say a receiver like beats Kobe Bryant or Melo Dotson. Let's say a defensive back intercepts Jalon Daniels, that would probably be a good sign for the other player, because we know Kobe Bryant is an all Big 12 corner. Melo Dotson is an all Big 12 corner. Jalon Daniels, when he's healthy, is an all Big 12 quarterback. So, like, when you have a known commodity and you know what they have done against other competition, and then you do something good against them, then it becomes something that is a little bit more impressive. So, like, there are certain matchups, there are certain things you will be able to learn where, yeah, if I don't know, like Douglas Emilien beats, I don't know, like Jacoby Davis or something on a route, again, you don't totally know how to do all that. But if Douglas Emilien beats Melo Dotson on a route, then maybe that becomes a little bit more impressive there. Also, how comfortable do kind of the backup quarterbacks look? And I think specifically this goes for Isaiah Marshall, because with Cole Ballard, he's now had the year plus now this spring in the system. With Isaiah Marshall, you're talking about a kid who should be in his last semester of high school, joining early at semester for KU. How comfortable does he look out there? And even though he's probably going to be way better just in the fall alone after summer and then the fall, as a freshman, you grow exponentially. Like, if he can right away look like he's comfortable out there as a true freshman, then all of a sudden, it maybe changes things a little bit for the offseason for KU in a couple ways. One, if Cole Ballard and Isaiah Marshall aren't doing it for him in terms of being like, yeah, we love the future of Isaiah Marshall, and Cole Ballard we love as right now like QB3, then maybe you do hit the transfer portal to try to get more of an experienced QB2 to play kind of like the Jason Bean role that you hope you don't need to tap into, but you certainly might. But if Cole Ballard and Isaiah Marshall look really comfortable in the spring, where you also know they're both young players and it's only going to get better in the fall, then you don't have to worry about that. And specifically with Isaiah Marshall, if he looks comfortable now, it's easy to see that his ceiling, his potential is even higher than Cole Ballard's. And so if he looks that comfortable now, does that mean he can win the backup job as soon as this year? Now, some areas that we don't know, or maybe we can't really learn in this game, like I said, one of them is in general how good certain things are or are not, because to a certain level, we won't know every single matchup there with, was this that thing messing up, or was this thing that being really good? But also play calling in general. Now, obviously, we know what Brian Borland is kind of like on the defensive side, so that's kind of more of a known thing anyway. But on the offensive side, you're debuting a new offensive coordinator this year with Jeff Grimes. I don't think you should go into this game expecting to be like, oh, this is what the Jeff Grimes offense is going to look like. Because guess what? Every year in this event, it's a very vanilla playbook, and it should be. It's spring ball. You're not installing everything yet. You're not game planning yet. You don't want to put stuff on tape that, maybe you'll run like one fun play or something just for the sake of like getting the camaraderie up for a spring game and getting people excited or something. But like, you're not going to show off your whole playbook. Like, you're going to focus on some of the fundamental things and some of the very basic things in this game. A, because you want to drill those things. They're your fundamentals and your kind of bread and butter, but also B, like, it's just not kind of the setting for that. So I wouldn't expect to come out of this being like, oh, this is what the Jeff Grimes offense is going to look like. This is where it's going to differ from Andy Kotelnicki in play calling. That this is not going to be the scenario for learning that. Things also we can't. Will Jalon Daniels be healthy for the season? I guess we could learn the opposite of this. Like, if Jalon Daniels, God forbid, he got hurt in something like this. Again, please, no, don't happen. But like, we can't learn if Jalon Daniels plays through the spring game fully healthy and looks great. That will be great, and that'll be an awesome takeaway to have, but that won't guarantee he's going to be healthy for the season, which is a little bit unfortunate. And then also, we can't learn from guys who are hurt. It seems like an obvious one. It is a dub, but like, unfortunately, a player like Deshaun Hanukkah, who that news came down that, he has the bad injury, and it sounds like it might be like an Achilles, where that would be like a season ender. I would assume then you're getting like a medical red shirt and hoping that he can come back for next year. But like, I wanted to see what he could do and sounded like he was doing well in camp. So that's unfortunate. But also guys who are hurt but are expected to be back for the fall. Like a guy like LJ Arnold, like obviously you won't be able to take anything away from that or other guys who are kind of in that same zone. All right, we're going to get on to the offensive players and defensive players we're most excited to see and why on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. First, this episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home that huge win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Let's start with the offensive players most excited to watch. I'm just going to get the easy one out of the way. It's the quarterback position, right? It always kind of is in these things. But it's you haven't seen Jalon Daniels play in a little bit. You want to see him look healthy out there, right? How much live action is he going to get? Is he going to get any live action? I don't know. But even if he does or doesn't, even if he gets a lot, even if he gets a little, it actually is very interesting who's going to be the backup. Last year was very simple. It was Jalon Daniels was the one, Jason Bean was going to be the two. And yeah, maybe there was some conversation who was going to be the three. But this year it becomes more interesting going back to the idea, are you going to add a portal QB in the offseason or something? Part of it maybe depends on this. I don't know. Probably the overall number of practices is going to be more important than just this one spring showcase, but still it does matter. It's another data point. And I want to see, does Cole Ballard look even better in year two, right? Because all things considered, he looked pretty good being your third string quarterback as a true freshman who was a walk-on up until midway through the season. That looked pretty good for Cole Ballard, right? So what does that look like in year two? And then with Isaiah Marshall, he could be the future of the program. Now you also have David McComb coming in a year. So, this is an opportunity for Isaiah Marshall to kind of lay down the law to be no, I'm going to be the future QB when Jalon Daniels is gone. You want to see kind of what that looks like, right? So I think there's a lot of excitement there. Logan Brown is very high up on the list for me on the offensive side of the ball. Now, obviously this one becomes even more important because Calvin Clements suffered an injury in spring. I don't think we have clarity on the effect of that to his fall potential or if he could come back at any point in the season. I don't know. Supposedly it was a bad injury though. But anyway, with Logan Brown, you're talking about a very talented, former 5-star recruit at Wisconsin. He graded really well on Pro Football Focus at Wisconsin for a few years there. So he suffers the injury last year and now coming back from that, if he can tap into that potential, this is still a kid who can be a day 2 pick or something like that in the NFL draft, a type of body that I don't know. Is it crazy to say be a first round pick? If he goes out there and he's all Big 12 first team with the recruiting pedigree and the body and, the length that he has, would that be crazy? I don't know. He was maybe on the trajectory at Wisconsin. I don't know. Wisconsin produces offensive linemen all the time. I don't know. Maybe that's overselling it a little bit. Point being, Logan Brown is a very talented player. And if you can unlock that, and this is the start of that, that's really impressive. So I want to see what he looks like. Douglas Emilien is another one. LJ Arnold having the injury, that means more opportunity for basically KU's fourth receiver because with the 3 returning starting receivers with Skinner, Arnold, and Grimm, okay, that next guy up is Doug Emilien. And I think Doug Emilien is a good receiver. I just think he hasn't had maybe, the stats that flash off yet because of just the opportunity of there's a bunch of other guys on the team. And whether it's this year or whether it's next year, I think Doug Emilien is going to break out. And I want to see that a little bit in this one with LJ Arnold a little bit banged up. Shane Bumgarner, now I don't know if he's going to start at center or not, but how big is he? That's been kind of a conversation with how exactly big is he? And it has a huge impact on how the KU offensive line works. If Shane Bumgarner hits and he's a good player, I think that's good for KU. Obviously, more good players is good. But it would allow Michael Ford to be more of your guard, where he was the best guard in the Big 12 last year on Pro Football Focus. So that would be huge. But if not, if he's more of a backup type, that can be fine too. But then you have to shuffle things around. Michael Ford goes to center. Are you playing a Nolan Gorchika? Kobe Baines is in there kind of at guard, right? There's some different things you can do at the guard position. But I think for KU to be at its best is Shane Bumgarner hitting his kind of ceiling, his potential for KU, at least because that was the idea to bring him in, right? It was to bring in this kid who was a stud at D2 and hope that he could be your starting center. And then the last one here is kind of the battle for the third running back spot. I mean, Devin Neal comes into the season with dark horse Heisman candidacy. Daniel Highshaw obviously is one of the best number 2 backs in the Big 12. And then that battle for the third back, right? Like Savion Morrison's an experienced player who has a lot of speed and explosiveness. It's never fully come together for Savion, but no more Dylan McDuffie on the roster. Could Savion be that guy this year, right? Johnny Thompson, like after I assume redshirting this past season, he's somebody who was really liked by them out of high school. And then you have, Harry Stewart and Red Martell who are in this freshman class, and Stewart seems already like Division I Power 5 ready in terms of kind of where his body and physicals are kind of at. So who's going to claim that third running back spot, I think becomes a little bit interesting too. Cause we did see some games where Dylan McDuffie just iced it away at the end of games. And I thought McDuffie was really good in his role. And, if Highshaw or Neal would have ended up getting hurt for a few games last season, then he would have been a capable fill-in to be that backup. Now, fortunately, that didn't happen for Kansas, and you're hoping that doesn't happen again this year. But, we saw it happen 2 years ago where you needed that third running back a little bit more. And I think that'll be kind of interesting with the battle this year. Let's get to our defensive players we're most excited to watch in the spring showcase on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite sporting event shouldn't be stressful. It should be just like going to the spring showcase. It's free to get into the spring showcase. You don't need to use Game Time, but it's the same type of experience because you're not stressed out going to the spring showcase because you don't have to pay for tickets or anything. Well, you do have to pay for the tickets on Game Time. You're not just going to get them for free, but it's going to be the same type of experience where it's very low stress. You get what you want to get. You can see the images of the seat view to know exactly what you're getting into. And if it's a big stadium, if it's a small stadium, maybe you've never been there before, or maybe you're going to a road game and you've never been to that stadium. Well, you can see it all with Game Time. You can get flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Top defensive players are guys that I'm most interested to watch on the defensive side of the football. I could probably just choose like 5 linebackers, to be completely honest. I'm not going to, but I'm going to start with one here. Cornell Wheeler. So Cornell Wheeler is wearing I don't know, is it going to be a green dot? In the NFL, it's the green dot. The green dot goes on the guy with the headset setup or the microphone setup, whatever you want to call it, in your ear that you're hearing the play calls from the sideline, from the coordinator of what's going to happen. And so like Nick Bolton is that guy for the Chiefs, and he has a little green dot that signifies you have that, right? So Cornell Wheeler, I believe, has been that guy in spring because that's like a new rule in college football this year that they're adding that in. And so that clearly signifies that he is kind of a leader of the defense, that he is like, to have that, like, you have to know not just what you're doing in the defensive play call. You have to be confident in knowing what basically everybody is doing. At least that's kind of my opinion of it. And so if Cornell Wheeler has that, we saw him show some really good flashes last season as more of a rotational linebacker. But this is a kid who's a former 4-star recruit, formerly at Michigan. If he's living up to his hype of where he's at, which, to be clear, I think you could make the argument that Cornell Wheeler and J.B. Brown were KU's 2 best linebackers last year. It was just in a smaller dose, which does make it a little bit easier when you're only having to come in on certain situations that are probably tailored better to you. But still, the ceiling of Cornell Wheeler is higher than the ceiling of what your starting linebackers were last year, maybe save Craig Young, because the athleticism is absolutely bananas there. So I want to see what Cornell Wheeler looks like with another year after he had that nice season kind of coming into his own last year. Can he take another step this year and help KU's linebacker core jump up the kind of Big 12 positional rankings? I'm going to go with Logan Brantley too. I know I could take like 5 linebackers. I'm not going to. This will be the last linebacker I take, I promise. You can make the case for a lot of other guys, but Brantley is somebody we didn't see on the field a ton last year because he was redshirting. He was a freshman linebacker who was like low 200 pounds, right? So you're working on your body a little bit, and I don't know that he's like 230 this year or anything, but probably going to be in a little bit better shape to get on the field, I would assume, because he didn't play past the needed games last year, that last year will count as a redshirt. But he's someone who, like, the coaching staff talked about when they recruited him and brought him on. They were already talking about him being like future captain. That's how well thought of that he is in terms of, I guess, the character and the leadership that he can show into the locker room. So, I mean, if a coaching staff says that about you, about somebody who hasn't even like played a snap for you when they were bringing him in, that has to get your alarm bells kind of going off about what this kid could kind of be. And so I don't know what the position exactly for Brantley is going to be. Is he going to be more of that hawk role of kind of the Craig Young, like we talked about earlier, maybe playing more of the safeties there this year, but does Brantley rotate in at all? Does he play one of the traditional linebacker spots? But young player who maybe we'll see a little bit more of this year. I'm not saying he's going to be a starter or anything, but like the trajectory here is maybe he's more of a rotational guy this year. Maybe he's a starter by next year. I don't know. Maybe he does blow past that and becomes a starter this year, but I want to see what it looks like with Logan Brantley, who's a kid who I'm really high on for the future, and maybe that future can be now. At the defensive end spot, I'm going to go with Dylan Wuedke, the transfer from Youngstown State. Now, I think, with Wuedke and Jeremy Robinson, both are more like strong defensive end types. I don't know if because you lost Austin Booker and you haven't been able to find that suitable replacement in the portal, if that means that one of Robinson or Wuedke would have to play more of the kind of weak side defensive end, which is more of kind of the pass rushing defensive end in KU's system, whereas the strong side is more of the run defender, and obviously both still impact in the passing game and everything. But what does he look like there? And how good he can be is going to be important, because KU went from, and they've done a great job at replacing the guy each and every year. It just makes you wonder, like, eventually are you going to hit a wall there? But so far they've done it. Kyron Johnson ends up being a 6th round pick. The Eagles has a really good season as pass rusher. Then the next year, it's like, oh, you lose Kyron Johnson. Who's going to be that guy? You find Lonnie Phelps. Lonnie Phelps ends up putting up even more production. Then he goes off to the NFL where he's undrafted. Then you bring in Austin Booker, and Booker does even better. And now Booker might be like a day 2 pick in the NFL draft, and he puts up even more production. Okay, I don't know that you can expect another increase, but they keep doing it. They keep finding surprises at the defensive end spot. Now, would that be Wuedke? Would that be a jump from Jeremy Robinson? Would that be somebody else? I don't know, but Wuedke comes in with real production at Youngstown State, so I want to see how that translates for Kansas and how exactly it does. Taylor Davis, we mentioned the 3 safety stuff. KU's got a lot of good safeties. Marvin Grant and OJ Burrows back as returning starters. You have the Dye brothers with Devin Dye and Jalen Dye. Both of them figure to factor in and get some real playing time. And then you've got a couple of young guys too, with like Taylor Davis and Mason Ellis, who, and I feel like I'm forgetting someone too. I probably will be mad at myself after this. But anyway, Davis is somebody who heard really good things about last year when he was like a true freshman. And I think he's going to find his way on the field, in some degree. And I want to see what that kind of looks like as maybe the future of the safety position for KU. And then I'm going to do a little cheat code here, kind of a slashy. Tommy Dunn / DJ Withers. Both of them made a jump last year. They went from, and this is so important as a program, you're going to lose good players. And especially in today's day and age with the transfer portal, if you're Kansas, you're going to lose good players, whether it's the transfer, whether it's the NFL draft. When you become good, which Kansas has gotten under Lance Leipold, eventually you lose players, and it becomes about, can you replace those players, not just with other players from the transfer portal, but with internal players that you recruited from high school, that you have developed for a few years. And yeah, maybe they didn't have the biggest role in the world, but they're ready to break out. That is what good programs do. You look all across the country, that happens everywhere, right? And so Tommy Dunn and DJ Withers were a couple of those guys. I do believe they were the last recruiting class for like the Miles era and stuff like that, but they've grown in the Leipold era. And so they went from being developmental guys, not really getting on the field, to then maybe playing a little bit toward the end of their season. And then last season, both becoming like starter level defensive tackles. And while that was the case, there were still some flaws and still some things that they were working on to get better, as still players who were redshirt sophomores a season ago. So now can they make another jump? Can they go from making the jump of being, developing to being good enough to play in the Big 12 to now being really good players in the Big 12? That kind of becomes a question. And I don't think you need it from both guys. Can one of them kind of make that jump? Now, if both guys make that jump and they go from being starter level in the Big 12 to being like good players in the Big 12, that's a huge boon for a defensive line that, yeah, maybe that is one area that, I mean, you already lost Gage Keys and Devin Phillips. So maybe that is one area where you lose Austin Booker. If you can say, hey, maybe we don't have as much punch at the defensive end spot, but we have more at the defensive tackle spot, it can offset that a little bit for KU. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. We will be back at some point and talk KU Football Spring Showcase recap. We'll also get into more KU basketball content and any breaking news coming at you. So make sure you're subscribed anywhere you get your podcasts, including on our YouTube page. We'll see you next time with LOJ.